Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Tim Gillette Show. Yes, that's my name. But the show is not about me. It's about my guests. It's about these great people that I meet across the world and get to interview them live on camera. Today's guest, I do know a little bit about because of the fact that we were both in a mastermind together. We're both connected through someone who's a well-known person in the show, Joe Pardo. All right, connected this gentleman, Maxwell Ivey. He's known as the blind blogger. And yes, I love it, the fact that this man here is so up on technology. All right. And I'm sure it'll come up. All right. I don't know. Maybe it'll come up, but the man's blind. All right. But he operates technology better than some people I know who are not blind. He's just that good. But he's also a great to know guy. All right. Great energy, got a great energy about him, great positivity about him. You're going to get to meet him live today. So let me bring Max. Max, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing good, Tim. And how are you doing today?
Man, I'm down here on a warm day in Texas. I don't know, what part of Texas are you in?
I'm about 40 miles from downtown Houston, so it's going to be warm by our standards again on Saturday or Sunday. But today is a good day weather-wise because I can turn the air conditioner off and not be sweating while I'm talking to you and your audience.
No, I know. Yeah, you're a little heavier than me. All right. Do you get that too? Where like you got to take it a little colder because you sweat earlier. I'm a skinny guy, so I've got to have 4 layers on to stay warm.
Well, as I tell people, us big dogs like it a little cool.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the one thing about me. When I moved, now I grew up in Pennsylvania, moved down here to Texas, and I moved down here because I wanted to be in a warmer climate. People said Florida. I can't do Florida. It's just too humid for me. But I love Texas, and I can deal with the 100-degree heat in the summertime. So I don't know if I want to live down where you are, closer to the coast, and deal with the humidity. But yeah.
No, this would be just like Florida for you. So yeah. I told you, and most people don't realize this. Not only is Texas a big state geographically, but it represents all 5 types of the terrain that you can have. Mm-hmm. We have everything from desert to deep piney woods, and also, as much as people would not expect this, Texas and especially Houston is you're looking at some of the most international places in the country.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's a fact. You know what I mean? I've got friends who live down there in the Woodlands, and I visit them quite frequently. They built a house in the Woodlands probably about 12 years ago now. And I have to go to work in Houston. I don't stay in a hotel. I stay at their house in the Woodlands,
Well, next time you're here, stop by, because I'm like just over the hill on the wrong side of the tracks from the Woodlands.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah. We live, our house is backs up to the state forest, which is, the Woodlands it would be developed more, but, since they can't tear down the trees, this is where the development stops in this area. So,
okay.
So, but they don't acknowledge that we're part of the Woodlands. So, but I'm, fairly close to where your friends live.
Cool. So, well, let's get a little bit, Max, about what you do and how you got into it. You're known as the blind blogger. All right. And what got you into doing stuff online as a blind gentleman?
Okay. Well, it goes back to 2007, which was 3 years after my father passed away. I had grown up in a family of carnival owners, and I traveled all over the southeastern U.S. with my family, operating carnival rides and games on a small scale. We didn't have any of the high dollar or big thrill rides that a lot of people are familiar with, but we did good as a family business. After he died, we couldn't keep the business going, so I needed to do something else. I had helped our family sell our older stuff when we needed to sell something old so we could buy something just a little newer. And so I thought I could do that as a profession, only to find out, wait a minute, if you're going to do that, now you have to do it online. So I had to learn a whole bunch of stuff. And, some things, because of technology, I didn't have the same choices other people would have had. And for example, when I started my first website in 2007, I had to teach myself how to hand code HTML, because there wasn't WordPress at that point.
Yep. Yeah.
And there wasn't a, blind guy can't do what you see is what you get, which was the other option at that time. So I built a website, one line of code at a time, for 5 years before WordPress came along. And I was promoting that website on LinkedIn and Facebook. And in some of the groups, people started referring to me as the blind blogger because I had a blog about the amusement business. I wrote about the equipment I was trying to sell, or the sales I'd made, or people that had listed with me, or, information that would be of benefit to people in the business who were looking to sell their equipment, advice on photography and storage, stuff like that. And people started calling me the blind blogger because when you are blind and you're in a group of mostly, if not all, sighted people, you generally become the blind whatever. The Joe on The Voice ended up being Blind Joe, and I have a friend in Arizona. They call him the blind magician.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a friend who's a rapper. They call him Rappin' Ray Charles. So these things generally attach themselves to you because it's very rare that there's more than one of us in a group of people, online or in person. So I was doing that. I was building the Midway Marketplace, and people said, Max, we like the fact that you take on these difficult challenges and that you do it with joy, and you just seem to find a way. We want to hear more about that. So I started the second website, and when I asked people what to call it, they said, we've been calling you the blind blogger for 2 years. So if that's available, that's what you should call yourself. So about 6 years ago, the blindblogger.net got started. And, since then I've written 4 books. I've traveled the country solo. I started my own podcast, and I'm now helping other people with disabilities start their own podcasts.
So cool. Well, I mean, that's it. You never once as a blind man looked at it as, okay, this is going to be too hard. You just went, there's a way I'm going to find it. Right.
That's exactly my brand. That's where this whole "what's your excuse" thing has grown up, is because I believe that there is a solution. There is a way to make things happen if you're willing to if you're willing to look for it, open your heart and your mind to. But here's the problem: there are solutions. I mean, there's always an option open to you. The problem is most of the time those options are things we don't want to do. So I mean, I say I decide to find solutions instead of making excuses, but that doesn't mean I even enjoy some of my solutions. For example, trust me, nobody wants to code HTML.
I don't.
Nobody wants to do that.
I'm a web guy. I don't want HTML. I don't want to study. I don't even want to learn it, Max.
I know, and it tends to break more than WordPress and other options. So why would you want it? I mean, let somebody else. I mean but that was my option, so I did it. I mean, more than once when I was a carnival owner, we would clean the grease off of the parts of our bodies that extended past our clothing and go work games or sell food, because that was how it was get open or else, which is where a lot of what I do now comes from. Because in the carnival business, the only thing that matters is, do you get open on Thursday or Friday night? Can they ride the Ferris wheel and buy a funnel cake? And you focus in on that from day to day and week to week, and you get really good at finding creative solutions. You also get really good at doing things you don't want to do. So there's a lot of things people want to do, and they tell themselves, okay, there just isn't a way for me to do it. And there is a way. The problem is that way is not easy. It's not fun. It's not gentle. It's, dirty, greasy, hard, distasteful. And I find that especially in the beginning of something is usually when you have to adopt the difficult stuff, because that's when you don't have the cash or the credit or the connections to do it any other way.
Yeah. So, I mean, I in my early years, Max, I drove 18-wheeler for a living. And I remember coming home. My daughter was like 5 years old. And I remember coming home from driving. I lived in Pennsylvania at the time, and I probably drove in from like Atlanta, Georgia, and like straight through. All right. I'm a day and a half without sleep. I got there to take my daughter to some party or something like that. And like, I remember the middle of the night stopping to get my 4th cup of coffee because I needed to keep awake to get home because I had a party to go to. And that's the same thing that made me successful when I created businesses. Was I was willing to do what it takes to get the job done. And it sounds like in the carnival industry, that's what you did. And it's what developed over in the Blind Blogger, correct?
Exactly. Yeah. Doing whatever you have to do. And then, following that from the blogging, or from helping people sell carnival, come to blogging, to podcasting, generally whatever I'm trying to do it's usually going to require me to find some unusual solutions just because I can't do things the way everybody else does them. And oh, by the way, thanks for giving me a good laugh when you started the podcast, because I am one of the worst at technology of any blind person I know. I mean,
I don't know. I've seen you. How many times have I seen you in the mastermind fix things on your computer while we're talking to you? So I think you're pretty good at it personally.
Well, it's like this. They say comparison is dangerous. They're usually talking about comparing ourselves to other people.
Yeah.
But comparison can be dangerous if, because one of these days my sighted friends are going to get to experience, Michael Babcock or David Goldstein or one of my other friends who is really good at technology. I mean, I won't edit my own podcast because I'm just that bad at it. But I have blind friends who are certified sound engineers that are running boards at radio stations. So I appreciate the laugh, because like I say, I may have two websites. I may do a lot of stuff online, but I would never call myself a tech person.
I do got to say that every time I've ever talked to you, whether you were speaking at one of Joe's events or you're in the mastermind we're in on a weekly basis, I got to say though, Max, I've never seen you be negative ever. You know what I mean? And I know some negative people, right? You were one of the most upbeat people, all right, for what life has handed you. And I always look forward to that, seeing that in you.
Well, I appreciate it. And, one of the things I try to get across to people is that no matter what technique you apply in your life, it doesn't happen overnight. We have to build up those habits. We have to practice them in order to get to the point where it becomes natural. So I grew up around people in a business where there was never time to feel sorry for yourself. I grew up with a parent who told me that there was nothing I couldn't do if I tried hard enough, even if sometimes he secretly kept some of his opinions to himself. I grew up in a business, like I say, where you just had to do the next thing. And so over time, I've gotten really good at finding the positive. And here's what I tell people, and this is my cute saying or catchphrase or however you want to call it. I say that in order to be positive, in order to find the positive, it's just like finding anything else that's lost. It's just like finding your TV remote. You decide it's there somewhere and you keep looking for it till you find it. So, and sometimes when you're through looking for it, you've got a messy living room, but you've got a cold drink in one hand and you're watching your favorite show. So, I mean, so over the years, I've gotten practice in deciding, okay, something good came out of what I just went through. Now, what was it? And one of my favorite examples is I once sold a $250,000 carousel in 30 minutes and didn't get paid for it. And after 2 months of trying to force the gentleman to pay me my commission of $25,000, by the way, I finally had to accept he was never going to pay me. And that was a really bad moment because we had already started thinking about what was going to spend the money on, We was looking at cars.
Yeah.
But when I
cars, wait a minute, how good of a driver are you, Max?
I'm horrible, but I'm a great passenger. Since they treated my CPAP, I don't even fall asleep on the road anymore, man. I'm a great passenger. I can talk or not talk. I can sing or not sing. I can get along with just about anybody. So I'm a great passenger. But I mean, we were looking at cars. It was $25,000, but after a few minutes, I'm like, okay, people are starting to know who the heck Max is as an equipment broker. They were sending me emails and calling me up, asking me if I could find them stuff that they were having trouble locating. More people listed their equipment with me. My website traffic was off the hook. I'm hearing a little bit of echo. I got recognized by the Mutual of Omaha's aha moment people and got a $100 check in the mail.
Man, so, it's just like it seems like once you get started doing something, you get recognized for it.
yeah, that's it. So there was that really bad hit, but there were a lot of good things that came out of it, and that's the thing. You have to get a habit of seeking out those positive things, knowing that they're there, and you do that long enough, you get good at it to the point where you don't even think about it, and then people who know you or don't know you like, man, you're one of the most positive people I ever met. And
Yeah.
it's all practice, people. Anybody that wants to can do what I do. But it starts with doing small things every day. It starts with getting up in the morning and just saying, okay, I know sometime today, at least one good thing is going to happen to me. I'm going to meet one amazing person. I'm going to get one great phone call. I'm going to have one great conversation. Somebody's going to say hi to me. There's going to be one thing in your day that will happen. And you start with one, then it's 3 or 4, then it's 5, and then it's like, it's noon and I haven't found my great thing yet today, because you've gotten to the point where you're expecting it, so that's, and I like to tell people the difference between spam and an opportunity is your attitude when you open your inbox.
Aha. That's that might be a quote later on to put in here. I don't know.
And it's actually worked that way for me. I mean, I won one of the Amtrak Writers in Residence Awards in 2016, and I took my money and went to New York City on Amtrak, which was a really cool experience. I wrote my 3rd book about the trip. I found that application in a piece of junk mail that somebody forwarded to me that I never asked for.
Oh,
but
wow.
I was like, well, let's go see what this thing is. And my first response was, I'm not good enough yet, because I was reading the bios of the previous winners. And then my second thought was, well, heck, it ain't going to cost you nothing to enter. So let's just fill out this form and go ahead. And they decided to select me. And it was an honor, because I was the first blind person they'd selected. And it was only like their 3rd year of doing the award on a big level. And usually it takes a lot longer than that for people with disabilities to start winning.
Yeah.
So it was, that one of my first speaking engagements here in the Houston area, because I usually seem to end up speaking in far off places for some reason, came because the local organizers at the Foundation Fighting Blindness sent out a letter wanting people to come attend their event. And I replied back to them like, wait a minute, you want me to attend? Why don't you want me to speak? And the next thing I know, yeah, we'd love to have you speak.
Yep. That's usually how doors open when you ask to open them up. So, and it's interesting, that you talk about that, and you talked about how you just took the chance and entered. How many people look at their life? For instance, I have epilepsy, right? And I looked at that when I first got it and first had issues with it in '92 as a disability. Now, I could focus on it and make it a disability, or I can get on with my life and work around it, right? And it looks like that's how you've run your whole life. You've just like, okay, this is me. I'll work around it, and let's go try it. And you win something like that. You know what I mean? The Rider Award.
Yeah. Now, I do have to admit that up until 2003, when my dad passed away, and 2007, when I finally decided to start my own thing, I had it in my head that the only thing I was ever really wanted to do, or ever would be good enough to do, would have something to do with the carnival business. And it wasn't until a really good friend of mine named Adrienne Smith, who used to be known as the blog commenting rock star, I met her online, and she took a liking to me, and I refer to her as my blogging mama, because she taught me everything I know about relationship building online and relationship marketing, and using comments and email outreach to just make friends and take it from there. She was the first one to go, Max, you're doing really good at what you're doing, but I know that you have more inside you than selling used carnival junk. So, and she finally convinced me. But if it wasn't for her continuing to push at me and go, to tell me that I inspired people, that I had a compelling story that needed to be told, I don't know that I would have gotten to this point, or maybe if I had, it would have taken me even longer than it did. Because trust me, it's taken me a long time. I've been online for over 14 years now, and I don't think I'm quite there yet where I want to be. But she finally explained it to me in a way that made sense. She said, Max, there are a lot of people in this world who have obstacles. Some of them even have disabilities. And like she said, you have a built-in excuse. You have a valid reason to do nothing but sit at home and listen to your TV and eat junk food if that's what you want to do. Nobody would say a first word about it. she said, the fact that you don't take that option and you show up every day and you work your butt off to try to do something for yourself, your family, and the people around you, that's what makes you compelling. So,
wow.
So all I did was show up every day, y'all. I still wouldn't agree that I'm anything, extra special, because I think that would make it harder on y'all. I mean, I believe that there isn't anything I've done that anybody listening to me right now couldn't do in their own lives if they had the right kind of encouragement, if they surrounded themselves with the right people, and if they approached their obstacles with the right attitude.
Well, I mean, it's always, we always can look at anything in our life as a disability, right? Yes. And I'm sure in some of the people you help, all right, that you find that they come to you and they think it's the end of the world. All right. And judging by everything you've told us so far, it sounds like you tell them, hey, listen, it ain't the end of the world. All right. We can move on with this. We can work with this. We can do stuff with this. All right. The fact that, I never would have pictured you being in the carnival industry, period. I didn't know that about you. I didn't know that. And I wouldn't picture you because of the fact I would prejudge the fact that, well, he's blind. He couldn't see those things. Why would he be in that business?
Yeah. Yeah. And there were, in the early days of the Midway marketplace, there were people who wondered why a blind person was operating a business that was so dependent on the managing of images and video. But we just didn't listen to them idiots.
Well, Max, let me ask you this. All right. Over the past 2 years with COVID and pandemic and like all this weird stuff going on, did that affect you as much? Because you seem to be a positive person. You seem to not let the world, whatever's going on in the world, you seem to not let it bother you. How did it affect your life?
Okay. For the most part, COVID hasn't really affected it, because the fact that there are now more options of things that will be delivered to somebody's house than there used to be is a good thing for somebody who lives in the suburbs where we don't have that fancy thing called mass transit, and a guy who pretty much built his brand online doing podcast interviews and hosting his own show, so the pandemic on that side of it really hasn't affected me or my business. But what I have noticed is that I got used to 3, 4, 5 times a year leaving the house, going somewhere, attending an event, visiting friends for entertainment, and also I got used to hearing the applause of a live crowd in person. And I have learned that I really miss both of those things. The anticipation of going on a trip or an adventure, as my other friends would call it, I miss that. And there are some days where I'm like, man, when is this ever going to end? It's like everybody else, Because here's one thing that you don't know, that most people don't know, is that for a blind person, if you're doing a virtual presentation, like I'm going to speak to an online classroom at Nepris, or I'm going to speak to one of Joe's virtual events, I have to turn off my screen reader so that I don't hear the people putting the thumbs up and the applause. So I've got to turn my screen reader off. So I basically am talking to an empty room. The nearest comparison I can think of is when an actor has to work in front of a green screen and pretend that they're being chased by a dinosaur or something, when it's just them in a room and somebody maybe waving a broom with a knot on the end of it. It's kind of like that. And so it's just not as enjoyable to give a talk to an audience that I can't hear, as opposed to as it is to, giving a talk in front of a group that I can hear their applause, their ahs, or, if maybe somebody, ever does not exactly enjoy what I'm doing, then, I hear that too. But it's like you're in an empty room talking. It's very disconcerting as a speaker. So I'm looking forward to in-person again. I'm looking forward to traveling, even though there are logistical issues for a blind person who usually is going by himself. And the other thing I really miss is that and this has a little bit to do with the way I approach events. I am not one of those speakers who's going to show up 15 minutes before his time, give his talk, do his Q&A, and run to the airport.
Yeah.
to me,
I've never been one of those. I can't. Only one time I had to leave an event early after speaking, and it frustrated me.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Most of the good ones are that way.
Yeah.
To me, the most valuable part of the event is the potential for networking with the other speakers, the event organizers, and the attendees. And I've had some great conversations with people over lunch or dinner in a hotel, So I miss those personal interactions that come from being at an event. And for those of you who are looking at this as a benefit to your business, I've signed a few clients at those events.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, that's the whole reason I speak, is I was speaking to sell, sell a package at, of, books and products and come to my event. So, I mean, that's why I went. So like, I'm always, every person that I meet after I speak, I'm all about, so are you buying the package today? All right. So like, again, that's the entry level for my business. So if I'm not there willing to turn the sales machine on, once you get off the stage, it's about relationships, and that's it. So, I mean,
yeah. Well, one of my best sells was hanging out in the lobby with some of the other attendees at like 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, and the next thing I know, they're telling me to send them an invoice. That's the way I like to do it. I like to drink a cold drink and have a great conversation, and then just kind of slide into, they like me so well, they need what I do, that they just have to hire me.
Yeah. So, I mean, and well, that's it. All right. When you've got a special talent, all right, finding the special people who need the special talent is great. And sometimes you're not going to do that if you don't take the time to actually connect with them and find out who needs it.
Yes. That is so true. And that's one of the things that I've noticed a lot of podcasters and podcast guests fall into that trap. They schedule the hour, but they don't schedule any time around the hour for their conversation, because I tell you, a lot of the best opportunities I've received over the last few years happened because I was hanging out with the host before or after we had pressed record, so there's, just having a conversation that is not going to be recorded, maybe finding out something about the host, because usually it's all about the guests, that you didn't know. So, it's just a matter of being willing to invest the time. And sometimes it really is just slow down for 30 seconds and let the other person finish a thought, or maybe even pause and not say anything, and give things a chance to breathe. It's funny, whether virtual or in person, there are just way too many people that are in too big of a hurry, or they're too interested in cramming their calendar full to the point they don't have a spare 10 minutes to talk to Tim Gillette after he's through talking to Tim Gillette,
Yeah, exactly. So, well, Max, I gotta ask you here. I mean, as you seem to be a guy that's like, like me, you're not going to quit. What are some future goals and future things you hope to be doing in the next 5-10 years?
I have a hard time with this question, because I generally don't look too far past next month or maybe the next few months.
Wow.
Plus, I've learned over the years that quite often God has bigger dreams than I do, and sometimes I don't really see what's going to happen until somebody else suggests it or explains it to me. And right now, the thing that I'm working on, I'm having a lot of fun with, is this podcast network. It should have started 2 years ago when Alex Sanfilippo, my friend over at Creating a Brand, tried to talk me into submitting it as my Holman Prize application idea, and I told him no, I didn't think it was. And then last year, he finally convinced me, and so I started it. And I've helped one woman from Canada launch a podcast about her efforts to win a gold medal in the downhill Paralympic snowboarding, which I think is so crazy it makes me seem vanilla, man. I'm having a conversation a week with other people with disabilities about starting podcasts or using podcasts to promote their stories. So it's a combination of everything I've done, because I've been a host. I am a host. I've been a guest on who knows how many podcasts, because I don't count. I've helped other people get booked. I've taught people how to be great guests. And so now I'm helping people launch shows. So pretty much all those skills coming together for the WYE or What's Your Excuse Network is what I'm working on. And I'm really hoping that I have finally found that one thing that I really just don't have to do anything else but, focus on the various aspects of that one thing. Because I mean, like in the future of the network, I just have this belief that one of these hosts is going to be a best-selling author. I believe some of them are going to want to host conferences or possibly, go from podcasting to maybe television or maybe broadcast. I don't know. I mean, that's the fun thing about it. I really don't know where these people are going to go. And then the other thing we're doing with the network is bringing in people who already have shows, who have disabilities, or their show is focused on a particular area of disability, and syndicating them on the platform so that we're starting to build a community of hosts who can help each other share their content, can solve each other's problems, offer emotional encouragement. And of course, since everything, generally comes back to money, I've seen several really good examples of where a podcast network, by combining multiple shows and their audience numbers, has been able to attract some real sponsors as opposed to the $25, $50 an episode kind of sponsors. So I'm hopeful that down the road, the network is going to lead to these hosts being financially sustainable in a way that they're not now. Because we help each other grow our audiences.
Cool. Well, another question that I always like to ask, all right, to my guests. Last year, Max, I had a gentleman on my show who I've been friends with since 2003, who built a huge network and a huge way of carrying his message with YouTube videos and podcasts around the world. All right. And he was on my podcast, and I was one of the last podcasts he did before he passed away.
Oh,
and it was a devastating thing. But so many people found my podcast after he passed away because they were seeking advice from him yet. So Max, all right, we're not going to live forever. All right. There's going to be a day that you and I aren't going to be here, but somebody's going to seek this podcast out to get one more thing that Max said. What's your message for him? All right. After you're gone from this earth.
The reason Max has been successful is because Max is willing to let other people be part of his journey and part of his story. So I would always go back to the idea of interdependence and being willing to ask for help and accept help when offered. And my expression that I use for this, because I find that if I explain it to people this way, it makes sense to them, because it causes them to think about the other person, to take the focus off of their own ego. And here's what I tell people, and I'm going to say this twice because it's the most important thing I'm going to say today. When you refuse to ask for help, you rob the other person of the joy they would have received from helping you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. When you refuse to ask for help, you rob the other person of the joy they would have received from helping you. So basically, you're making other people's days harder. You're making other people's lives less joyful. You are just making it worse on everybody by trying to do it all by yourself.
Wow. That right there is worth the whole show right there. So,
I knew it was good. I didn't know it was that good, but thank you.
I told you we were going to have a good time, Max.
Yeah.
So
used to hosts had to tell me to say it again. That's when I started to think it was pretty good,
Yeah. No, it is. So I'm glad you got it. And I'm glad you got it down to repeating it. So, well, Max, it's been great getting to know you live on air. All right. I want you to say the website so people, both the audio and the video people, can hear it and come find you and find out more about you.
Sure. They can find me at theblindblogger.net. That's theblindblogger.net.
Cool.
Yeah.
So before you go, all right, I play a game, Max, with every one of my guests. I have 7 envelopes here in front of me. I want you to pick 3, number 1 through 7. Pick 3 numbers, and I'm going to ask you the questions in those envelopes.
All right. Since as a carnival person, we always put the best prizes in the corners, I'm going to go with 1 and 7 to start with.
Okay. 1 and 7. What's the next one?
1, 7, and we'll go with 4 since I'm born in April.
4. An April boy. So, all right. Well, I'm going to open these envelopes and ask the questions. You may get the girl questions, by the way. You may get the questions that don't relate to you.
I will come up with something. That's either a gift or a curse of mine, is I very rarely don't have an answer. And if I don't have one, I'll come up with one.
Okay. Well, question number 1 in here, I can't see you doing either of these.
Okay.
Because question number 1 is, do you prefer bowling or putt-putt?
Okay. I prefer bowling, but when I could see, I would prefer putt-putt. It's a much harder game. Bowling is a much easier game to do blind than putt-putt.
I can imagine that. I really can. But I seen a thing on I can't remember what news channel, of a blind gentleman who learned to play golf, and the day he got a hole in one was a joy to him, right? Because he learned how to, how to turn the body and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a blind golf association. There's an international blind golf tour. There are guys actually making, semi-pro living at blind golf.
Wow. Anyway, well, question number 2 is related to pets. Are you a dog person or a cat person?
I am a dog person because cats don't ever want to come when you want them to. So, as you know, I've had some great dogs. I think in the 4th year now since I lost my mindfulness coach, Miss Penny, the crazy wonder dog that was Miss Penny, the Gray Mason, and that dog taught me so much about mindfulness. Because as I tell people, dogs don't worry about tomorrow or 5 minutes from now. They're thinking about right now. And if they want to chase a squirrel, they're going to chase a squirrel. And if they want to eat and the bowl is empty, they're going to come go, hey, feed me. That's just the way critters are.
Yeah.
And she actually taught me a very important technique that I use called modern meditation, which basically is taking repetitive, mind-numbing tasks that you don't have to think about too much, and using them as an opportunity to clear your mind and focus on something that you need to be thinking about.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, let me move on. Question number 3 in this envelope is coffee. Do you like Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks? Which one do you prefer?
I am a heathen. I will drink pretty much any kind of coffee. If I have to pick, I would go Dunkin' Donuts because I'm a bigger fan of Dunkin' Donuts other stuff than I am of Starbucks other stuff.
Yeah. I drink just espresso now, so I kind of like Starbucks because they have 2 different kinds of espresso. But I grew up on Dunkin' Donuts coffee. That was how I got. Was my morning coffee every morning was Dunkin' Donuts. Yeah.
My problem with Starbucks is it's a lot harder as a blind person to know what the heck to order.
I was wondering if, because I do everything on the app to order my drink. I was wondering if they had an app designed for blind people. Yeah.
No, but the app, generally the better apps most of the blind people are using iPhones, and iPhone has their screen reader is called VoiceOver. Mm-hmm. So most of the apps, especially the more commercial apps like that, are, if not accessible, they're at least usable, because people like Starbucks, they're in the public sector, so they're worried about getting sued. So I will say I've never tried either Dunkin' or Starbucks. That might be a future podcast episode. Right. But the thing is that usually what will happen is there'll be some unlabeled buttons or some unlabeled links, and you just have to figure your way around and come up with hacks for different apps, different websites. And that's one of the biggest frustrations I deal with as far as being visually impaired is generally whenever somebody updates a website or an app, I have to go back to square one and figure out, okay.
Oh, got to adjust it. Yeah.
I will tell you. I know these are supposed to be rapid fire questions, so I'm sorry about taking too much time.
But they invoke stories is why I do these questions. But one of the things I could tell you about I worked for Starbucks for 5 years, and one of my stores, we actually had once a month, they had a deaf night where a bunch of deaf people would come there just to communicate and talk. And we had to figure out a way for them to order their coffee because they couldn't talk. Right.
Yes. Right.
And it was,
some of them couldn't.
Yeah. Some could, but it was, to us, they loved us so much because we invented a way for them to communicate with us. And then we had our delivery driver would show up at night. We actually had to petition to get our delivery driver to show up on that night after they went home, because he would come through the store going, excuse me. And they couldn't hear him. And we had to go, and Starbucks was to me, they were one of the most accepting of people with disabilities and asking how they can help it. That's what I really loved about that.
And they have a sincere dedication to employing people with disabilities. And
Yes, they do.
And the important part that I just said there was sincere, because there are not a lot of companies, because there are a lot of companies still fighting the idea of hiring people with disabilities, but there are a fair number that only do it because they have to or because they're afraid of looking bad. But Starbucks, they have really invested in training, recruiting, promoting, and there are people with disabilities in the upper levels of Starbucks nowadays because of it.
Well, Starbucks is one of the most accepting companies out there because they've not only disabilities, but I've also seen them do it with veterans. All right, with the lesbian and gay transgender community, they've accepted them. All right, they are very accepting and trying to adapt to work with the people in their niche, and I love that about them. So
which is smart business to bring it back around to Tim Gillette. I mean.
All right, well, let's move on. Envelope number 7. Question number 1 is, everybody wants to know this about Max: boxers or briefs?
Boxers, because I generally find briefs less comfortable for my body style.
I've gotten into boxer briefs, so they're kind of in between. I can't go one or the other. I have to create something in the middle.
I tried those once, but it's still just a matter of not accommodating my style, the way I'm built. I mean, I am not the person I was. Let's see, this is 2022, so I'm not the person I was in 2012 when I had gastric surgery and was up over 600 pounds.
Yeah.
But nobody's ever going to call me little. I'm 6'4" and 270 or so. So it's about comfort, and trust me, I think this is one of the few areas where men and women can understand each other. If women, it's just a matter of being comfortable with a bra. Men, it's a matter of being comfortable with their underwear. And so I'd stick with boxers.
It's a huge thing, being comfortable with your underwear. So
question number 2. It can affect your whole day, man.
It can. Question number 2 in this envelope. All right. I don't know if these even matter to you, but Coke or Pepsi?
Well, first, I only drink Diet or Zero, and when I do drink it, because we don't bring a lot of it home.
Yeah.
But my family has always been a Pepsi family.
Really?
Yes. And it goes back to my dad being a Pepsi drinker and raising us to be Pepsi drinkers. And of course, the one thing Pepsi has that Coke doesn't have, that Coke tried to do when they did the new Coke, is Pepsi has a higher sugar content than Coke.
Yeah. It does, but I'm surprised. You live in Texas and it's not Dr. Pepper?
No, that isn't.
You
are right. No, that's a valid question, because Dr. Pepper is from Dallas, and and a lot of Texans drink it because they like it or out of loyalty.
I love it.
It's a great. I love it. And Dr. Pepper Zero is one of the few drinks where the zero version tastes better than the regular version.
Yeah, a lot of people love the diet. My wife even loves the diet better than the regular. So, last question in this envelope here, Max, is hotel or camping?
Okay, I spent half my life traveling around the country in raggedy old house trailers. Do you think I want to get in a camper?
I don't think so.
Or go sit in a tent? No, give me a 5-star.
Cool. To me, camping and roughing it is a 4-star hotel.
There you go. Now, I am one of the few legally blind Eagle Scouts, and I have spent more than my fair share of nights in a tent, but it was with a bunch of other boys back before I was old enough to know better,
Yeah. All right. Well, let me move on to envelope number 4, question number 1. When you're riding in the car, because apparently you're not driving, would you like to listen to music or podcast?
The podcast really wasn't a question the last time I really rode with somebody. I prefer to listen to music because I'm a singer, and and I hope they're going to play at least one song I know the words to. That's my approach.
That's a good way to be. So I told you that you might get the women's questions. Well, question number 2 in this envelope is high heels or boots?
Okay. I have no personal preference because I've never worn any of them, but I will admit to growing up a male and say that I prefer high heels over boots on women. If that gets me somewhere into the ballpark.
Well, that's my preference. So anyway,
I think
And
it's most men's preference, but I
Yeah.
just think it's one of the things people wouldn't necessarily think to ask me that.
Yeah.
So,
So question number 3 really isn't going to fit you, Max, but I've got it's in the envelope. I'm going to ask it, and you're going to make
All right.
fun because it has to do with one side of it, not the other. And the
All right.
question is, at the movies, do you like popcorn or candy? But I guess we can just
I
say,
like
do you like
popcorn.
popcorn or
I
candy?
like popcorn.
Yeah.
No,
I can't
actually,
picture you going to the movies that much.
no. Actually, they have. Well, nobody goes to the movies lately, but they have this thing called audio descriptions,
Mhm.
and Disney has even taken it farther. Where usually like say there's 20 screens at a theater.
Mhm.
There might be 1 or 2 screens that have the equipment to broadcast the secondary audio, so you can listen to the descriptions.
Oh wow. Yeah.
But if you're going to anything that was produced by Disney, you can use their app on your phone and you can get the audio descriptions. And some of the other companies are starting to develop similar apps. So by the time COVID's over, I think it'll be pretty much you'll be able to listen to any movie you want to. But as far as going to a movie, my personal preference is to have somebody to describe it to me because they generally know more about what I would be interested in knowing.
That's a good point.
But I've always preferred popcorn. I'm more of a savory than a sweet type person, and that's just the way I've always been. And the other thing, just one last comment on the audio descriptions is, for a long time, because we didn't have a law concerning it here in the U.S., most of the television descriptions were being done by Sky TV and TV4 over in the UK. So just imagine you're listening to a U.S. program with British descriptions. That can be very funny. I mean,
there could be. So, well, Max, I do want to take this time now to thank you for being a part of my show and being a guest today. I do appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to share with my audience and my friends about you and your story.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I'm hopeful that people have been watching us. They're gonna learn something. They're gonna change the way they approach things, and we'll get to hear from them that they've actually taken some actions to improve their lives. So that's what I hope every time I sit down with somebody. But the one most important thing I want to make sure I tell you, Tim, is this: I started doing podcast interviews because I really didn't have any other way to meet people. Wow. So without these conversations, nobody would know who the heck the blind blogger is. There wouldn't be the blind blogger or what's your excuse. And a lot of the other opportunities I've had, such as speaking at conferences and publishing books, a lot of that stuff just wouldn't have happened. So I want to thank you for being part of my journey and part of my story, and for doing your part, not only to help me spread my story, but all the other people that you've had on here or will have on here.
Cool. Yeah, we've got almost 1,000 interviews to date, and I kind of, like I said, I love doing this. This is what I love doing. So it's my part of my job.
And that's something people really need to know, is that if you have a business, having conversations on podcasts is the most fun, most energizing thing you are going to do all week to promote your business.
You're right.
And I happen to be an expert at that. If any of y'all need help with that.
Cool. So, well, Max, I thank you again, man, for coming out.
You're very welcome. I'm very blessed to get to spend some time with you. Every time I get to talk to you, it is wonderful. So thank you.
You bet. So, you guys, the listeners, today, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. All right, checking out Max and hearing his story today. Do me a favor, go over to his website, theblindblogger.net. All right, find a little bit more about Max and get connected with him. Go check out his podcast. I'm Tim Gillette with The Tim Gillette Show, and I'll be back real soon with another guest. In the meantime, guys, have a great day. Bye.